Good morning. Welcome to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. Please stand. We'll do the opening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome, everyone. We don't quite have a quorum as of yet, so we'll skip the minutes for a bit, but I'm Kimberly Overman, the chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. I'm going to ask everyone that's at the table to please introduce yourself and say like 2 seconds about, actually you probably have a little more because we've got about 3 or 4 people that are on the way that are going to probably be here in another 5 or 10 minutes. So if you want to start with Catherine.
Sure. Good morning. Catherine O'Donnelly. I am a land use and real estate development attorney in the Tampa Bay area.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I'm David Hollis, representing the Housing Finance Authority Board.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Donahue. I represent the city of Temple Terrace, who happens to be building currently 4 Habitat for Humanity homes, and we have 12 on the docket.
Outstanding, outstanding. There's a good atta girl.
Cheryl Howell, Affordable Housing Director, Hillsborough County.
Nancy Takamori with the County Attorney's Office.
Christine Nieves. I'm a local realtor, and I'm also a resident of Hillsborough County.
Excellent. We actually have several individuals. Where'd the piece of paper go? Oh, here it is. Several individuals that will not be able to join us today and asked for permission to basically to let us know. Elizabeth Strom, Connie Burton, Sarah Combs, Mark Rosenberger, I always say it wrong, Rosenwasser, will be a little bit late, but he will be here. Coley Powell will also be a little bit late, but he will be here. And I just heard from Mayor Lott, he will not be able to attend. So we'll just barely have a quorum, I think, when we get there.
Cheer when those 2 come in.
Right, exactly. But they let us know. They let us know, and that's half the battle. I'm going to open it up for public comment. We have several individuals that have signed up. And I did want to make a major announcement as soon as we're done with public comment, but I'll give you a bit of a heads up. There were committee meetings over the weekend, and the House apparently has chosen not to sweep the Sadowski Trust, with the exception of about $25 million for coronavirus, but we'll take it, okay? So keep your fingers crossed. They're still in budget talks. A lot can happen between now and Sendai, but that is really, really fabulously good news. And it will flavor how we move forward, and looking forward to a better year. So with that, the first person signed up was Ann Madsen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Ann Madsen, and I have the privilege of being the executive director of the Helen Gordon Davis Center for Women. We're a 42-year-old nonprofit here in Tampa Bay, and for almost 40 years, we have been doing work with owner-occupied rehab through our flagship program, the Senior Home Improvement Program. We've since expanded the name to call it Construction Services, and I'm happy to tell you that we have a wonderfully dedicated staff led by a general contractor, Mike Preventure, who's with me today. In the last 2 years, we have been working with the county very closely, and we have provided services to more than 50 homes with a total of approximately $2 million in rehab work to help make the homes of our clients safer for them to live.
Ms. Madsen, we actually have you on the agenda to do a whole presentation. So if you're just offering 3 minutes of public comment, that's great. If you're wanting to do your whole presentation, can I bring you back?
I'm happy to do anything in 3 minutes, so I can do this very quickly. We're here to thank the county and the commission for supporting this program, because it's so essential to the people who live here in Hillsborough County. These are people that really have incomes of $30,000 to $40,000, and a lot of them cannot afford repair work, and they live in pretty disastrous conditions. A couple of years ago, I received a phone call from a woman whose family was pleading for help, and She was sleeping in her bathtub because her roof was leaking. She was 82 years old. So I will just tell you that we are grateful to the commission. We are delighted to be community partners as we've been for many, many years with Hillsborough County. Particularly grateful to Cheryl Howell and her team. And that might bring to an end my 3 minutes, but I'm just here to say thank you. And I'd be happy to come back and do a more complete presentation whenever you'd like.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Next on the agenda, is he on the agenda too? No? Okay. Ashton Nesbitt, please. Sean? I think we have a quorum. Excellent.
One more.
Are you on the presentation too? Okay. Yeah, he's on the agenda as well. Okay. Bishop Michelle Patty? I love it. Everybody signs up early, so that's great. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. I'm Bishop Michelle B. Patty. I live in Brandon. However, I'm very concerned about what is taking place a few blocks from here. There is a human crisis. No, I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about 1,200 people that is going to be displaced on November the 1st. They have been, the property has been sold. We're talking about Tampa Park. They are not given any monies for relocation. They've just been given a letter that they have to move on by November the 1st. However, they are expected to pay their rent. If they do not pay their rent, that they will be evicted, thereby putting an eviction notice on their record. This is causing a hardship. We have people, most of the rents are subsidized. We have people that it's going to affect the balance of the voting for November, because with that it's a big population, they're going to be moved out. We have schools that are going to be affected. We have children that are special need kids. It's just going to be relocated, but they were given monies to help them with the relocation. These people have absolutely nothing, and have to continue to pay your rent and not be able to save up anything is it's a hardship. So to this commission, I'm just asking that you all look. I know there's money somewhere that can help this transition. The people know they have to go, but it need to be maybe to the end of the year, a little extension, but let's get them some monies where they can smoothly transition from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here today. Sean Wilson.
Good morning, Sean Wilson, Blue Sky Communities, 5300 West Cypress Street. Well, I wanted to announce that on March 31st at 11 a.m., we are going to be having our ribbon cutting for Preserve at Sable Park. That's at the corner of Williams and Broadway. I think the commissioners have already received a heads up, and Cheryl helped me set that date. So thank you very much. Looking forward to big county participation. It's an important project for you guys and also for the HFA. So hopefully HFA folks will be able to attend as well. And to the prior speaker's point, we have phase 2 of that project is geared towards homeless, and while the folks at Tampa Park are not homeless today, I think by the time we open up, they would probably fit the definition of homeless. So I'm not sure exactly what our referral process is going to be for those units, and that's called Sable Place. But of course, we would love to be able to house some of the folks at Tampa Park.
How many units?
It's 112, but I think not all of them are for homeless. Like 80 some are for homeless people.
Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for the work that you're doing. Okay, that was our last public speaker on the sign-up sheet. Does anyone else have something they'd like to offer? All right, well, terrific. Thank you very, very much. We are still one short of a quorum, so we're going to pass on to the approval of the minutes until we get one more soul, and I think Mark is on his way. So I have basically the chairman's report, and within that we have several presentations. One is the Land Trust presentation with Ashton Nesbitt. Nesbitt? Okay. Ashton Nesbitt. Come on up, sir. Sean is with the Florida Housing Coalition and is working with the affordable housing team to help bring resources to us to help us be more innovative and as innovative as we can in the area of affordable housing. Welcome.
Good morning. And first of all, I have to thank Cheryl Howell with Affordable Housing Services, our director, for the opportunity to work with Hillsborough County, and we're doing quite a bit with consolidated planning as well as nonprofit capacity building. And so we just want to thank Cheryl for that opportunity. Again, working to create that infrastructure that's so needed in order to deliver affordable housing for our community. And thank Commissioner Overman for inviting us here to talk about community land trust. Pretty low tech this morning, but in front of you, you have a community land trust primer, which is a document that we produce at the Florida Housing Coalition. Pretty much covers everything about community land trust, what it is, some of the legal issues around it, and some good examples from around the state of how they're implementing this strategy. And first, I just wanted to start off in talking about just generally the difference between subsidy, recapture versus retention. And so we know that affordable housing, to produce it, requires some sort of subsidy in some way, shape, or form, whether it's direct subsidy in the form of money or some indirect subsidy through waivers of fees, infrastructure, whatever the case might be. And so when that subsidy goes in, and we'll just use down payment assistance as an example, when that goes in today, and that might be Cheryl's very generous with her money, maybe, or the HFA, $20,000, let's say, goes in to help a family purchase a home today. And that's in 2020. So in 2035, when that person is ready to sell that home, they're probably going to pay that $20,000 back. But in 15 years from now, can Cheryl take that same $15,000 or $20,000 and help the next family? And the likelihood is that's not going to be able to happen because the price of real estate has gone up substantially in that period of time. And so that's called subsidy recapture. So Cheryl's very happy to get that money back because she needs it. But by now, she probably has to take $35,000 to assist the next family. So she's getting that $20,000 back. She has to now put out $35,000. The way that federal and our state money is going, we just don't know what's going to happen from year to year. I'm sure Cheryl would like to get as much money from the federal and state sources to match the way real estate prices are going, but she's not getting that. So looking at a tool in the toolbox to be able to preserve some of that money that comes in to help some families, as well as to give some folks the opportunity to get into homeownership that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity. And so that's where we look at subsidy retention, and that's a way to make a one-time investment in housing that maintains that housing as affordable permanently, we like to say in perpetuity, forever, that one-time investment. And so that's subsidy retention, and how we do that is through a matter of ways, through legal documents that come with restrictions upon resale price and as to who homes can be sold to. And so that's how we retain some of that subsidy, but we make that investment one time, and it continues to serve folks for generations and generations to come. And so that's the tool that we want to introduce into the toolbox in terms of delivering affordable housing for our community. And one, the chief way that we like to promote for subsidy retention is the community land trust model. And what that is as a model, is a separation of ownership of land to ownership of the improvements. For those of you that may have a commercial background, a ground lease is a pretty common thing in commercial. It's the same type of concept, just applied in residential, and this could be multifamily, it could be single-family home ownership. So you're separating the ownership of the land from the improvements. And so the community land trust as an organization or as an entity is the entity that maintains ownership of the land and also stewards the affordability long-term. So there will be a ground lease agreement between the community land trust organization and the owner of the improvements that says when you get ready to sell, you have to sell it at a certain price to another income eligible homeowner. And that's in a homeownership setting, in a multifamily rental setting. It's very similar. The housing that's built has to be maintained as affordable housing in perpetuity. And if it's ever transferred, it has to be transferred to another entity that's going to maintain it as affordable housing in perpetuity, and a new ground lease is signed at that point. And so that's the concept of community land trust home ownership. I will say it is home ownership. It's not second-class home ownership. It's real home ownership. There is a 99-year ground lease, so that's legally, that's effective home ownership. So the person that has that 99-year ground lease, they're responsible for maintaining that land as well as the improvements. In Florida, they do have a real estate tax advantage. In fact, they're taxed according to the resale value of their improvements and the leasehold value of the land. And so essentially, they're paying a very small ground lease payment. It might be $20 or $30. So when it comes to real estate taxation, the effective value of that land is zero. So they're getting savings on their taxes as well. And so they're saving, and also going into it, they don't have to purchase the value of the land. So they're getting a lower price to get in. They're getting savings on their taxes. And long term, that creates a level of affordability and an option for some folks that could not purchase fee simple on the market. And so that's kind of the overview of community land trust. You do have a primer. I didn't want to stand up here and talk for 15 minutes. I did want to open the floor for questions, if that's okay, with the commissioner. So I'll open the floor at this time for anyone that has any general questions about community land trust.
I'll hold mine till everyone else has an opportunity. You guys have any questions? Chrissy?
Where does this exist locally? Where are there examples of this?
Can you pull your mic down?
So here the question was, where does this exist locally? Here in the Tampa Bay area, there is a community land trust called Bright Communities Trust that operates. They're headquartered in Pinellas County. They do have a few housing units here in Hillsborough County as well. So that's one example. Also, separately, Pinellas County government operates the community land trust program through their HFA, where they do all of their multifamily is done in a community land trust model. So they have that going on as well. So those are two local examples of the community land trust here.
Great. Cody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the ground lease, are there any sort of restrictions on the homeowner in terms of like what they can do in terms of improvements, to the property? I mean, is it, where they, they can paint it whatever color they may like, or, something like that, to where, a lot of people, that's one thing that's pretty integral to homeownership is kind of, this is my property, my home, I can kind of do whatever I want to do with it, sort of thing.
There are some typical restrictions, not, paint color, but the restrictions really relate to maintaining affordability for the next homeowner. For instance, some land trusts restrict installations of things like pools because of the maintenance costs that, someone's gonna, take on long term. But things like that, there may be some restrictions in terms of, how much you can add on to the house. Usually you have to stick within the footprint. These are normal things that folks put into their ground lease, sticking within the existing footprint. But these are kind of policy things. There's nothing that says you can have as wide or as narrow as you want, depending on the program. But from a policy standpoint, the idea is to maintain the affordability of that unit long term. So if you start adding things like pools or you do a substantial addition, now you're starting to increase the price, the value of that house. And so the idea is to maintain affordability long term. So you have to look at it, if you choose to go this route, look at it, locally and kind of decide, what's going to work best.
And then one last question, if you don't mind. Do those ground leases, like when you said how they operate similar to commercial, do we monetize those at all?
In terms of,
Do they get like, sold like the ground lease or borrowed against or anything like that? So to try to
No.
duplicate? No.
no, not in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Orlando Goods?
Have you met with anyone with the city of Tampa regarding land trust?
I have spoken very briefly with the city of Tampa. We know that's something that they're looking into as well.
I made a motion about that a couple of months ago, so I was just wondering how you met with anybody with our departments. All right, thank you.
Good.
Commissioner, Councilman Goods, I just want to add that I'll be meeting with Vanessa McCleary on land trust, Tampa Park, and a host of other items as well, so.
Thank you.
And I wish Sarah was here today because I know the UACDC is working on land banking. So that's the same thing. You just haven't heard of theirs.
Land banking and
They're,
land trusts are
Are they
different
totally
things.
different?
I- can you-
So would
can
you
you address
explain
that
the
issue?
difference then? Because
Sure.
as I was listening, it sounded very similar, so.
Yeah, I would say they're complementary, and we've actually spoken with Sarah Combs about CLT before. Land banking is exactly what it says, is, acquiring land and you're holding it for some future purpose. And then in Florida, of course, we have surplus lands law where local governments are required to look at their surplus land and determine what's suitable for affordable housing. And so we call that our de facto, land bank statute. And so that kind of creates the bank of land that's available for affordable housing. Now, what you do with it is where it becomes complementary. And, what we recommend is local governments look at the land that's available and then determine, what portion of it they want to set aside for permanent affordability. Some of it is maybe more appropriate to sell and take that money and use it for affordable housing. Some of it you may not always want to have set aside, but you want to look at what portion of it you want to set aside for permanent affordability. And so what the community land trust does is the land that's banked, let's say you want to put it out and you want to develop it, and you put that into your proposal to say, we want this developed as permanent affordability, in partnership with the land trust, that there will be a ground lease agreement between the developer and the land trust.
And
Hi, Sean. Could you share with us any examples of how you've seen land trusts being used for area revitalization with a combination of affordable housing and economic development?
Question. The first one that comes to mind is down in Delray Beach, Florida. They have a community land trust, and what they did, they established that through the CRA. And so they were thinking ahead. When the CRA was getting started, they knew they were going to be successful. And so they were planning for the success of their revitalization efforts. They knew at some point the investment they were making was going to pay off, and the pricing and the value of that community was going to go up. And so they decided early on that they would set up a community land trust to maintain some affordability within the community they were investing in going forward. So no, it didn't apply to every property, but they wanted to maintain a certain percentage of those units as affordable housing that were developed long-term. And so they basically established the community land trust there in partnership with the city and the county, and it still operates very much like that today. The community land trust is essentially housed within the CRA. They provide office space, and they have a very close relationship. And so they established that very early on, and that's what they're doing as a way to maintain affordability in a community that they're revitalizing. And so, they were kind of the first in to do some housing rehab and some new construction. And so they definitely contributed to the raising of values within that community. And now it's starting to flip in the other direction. Housing is worth quite a bit more than what the CLT is selling for. So now the CLT is able to come in and offer affordable housing for folks to stay in the community where they want to stay, and it maintains that affordability long term. So they were very proactive in that way, and looking to the CLT as a model to maintain affordability as a hedge against potential displacement from the values of homes rising in a community due to their redevelopment efforts.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason why I wanted you not only to be here to help us understand community land trust, but also why I wanted it on the agenda. I have talked with Vanessa McCleary and with the mayor on working on a partnership in the area of developing a strategy as you just described. We have coming lots of folks moving to Florida, affordable or not, individuals that are wanting to live here and work here. And because of the shortage of workforce housing as well as affordable housing, it's critical that the county work with the cities to strategically look at ways that we can protect communities from gentrification and to allow communities to take advantage of locally placed or properly, opportunity placed residences, whether it be multifamily, whether it be single family. And we're looking at our land use laws to be able to determine how to best create the density that we need in areas that are focused for future, current and future transit development. Ways that we can look at, as you mentioned earlier, subsidies such as waivers and those things for construction. But if we don't, and based on our past history, when we've allocated an investment for affordable housing, it sunsets. And so if we were to build, for example, a multifamily or help build a fund on a multifamily project along a transit corridor or an area where jobs are, after 20 or 30 years, that provision disappears. And then it goes to market rate, and those individuals frequently can't stay. And people build their lives around the communities that they live in. And so developing a longer-term strategy, one which makes sense for not only the county and the cities, but for the citizens that like living in their neighborhoods, that they, put their investment in. I think a land trust is a great way of actually helping that have some stability to our communities and avoid gentrification. And I mean just gentrification in the sense of displacement, not necessarily gentrification of an entire neighborhood. Because gentrification is not a bad thing. If everybody's quality of life improves, that's a good thing. But if we end up moving people out of a neighborhood, as we're witnessing right now with what's happening with Tampa Park, we have to look for ways that we can avoid those kinds of things. So I am looking forward to working with you. I want us to really think about how we adopt this and make recommendations to the Board of County Commission on how we establish either a community land trust or some type of arrangement along with our municipalities in order to be able to actively and effectively create opportunity for people to live and stay in their homes, whether that be multifamily or single family. So thank you.
Thank you for taking my question. What is in it for the home, for the property owner? What is the enticement that we could have offered to the owner of the Tampa Park Apartments years ago? It's, too late now, but, what's in it for them?
I want to say that's a very, very complicated situation with Tampa Park, with a lot of history. And so I want to say I believe that it was, good intentions. And so some
please,
things.
I'm not pointing fingers at the
Right.
owners. I just want to know, going forward, if we're going to offer this and say, look, these are communities that we want to protect, what is the enticement for a property owner to agree to go into a land trust?
Sometimes you can come in with funding to recap. Other times, there's absolutely nothing that you can do because it's market forces. So when the market changes very rapidly, people are in business to make money, so that's their purpose. Our purpose is to serve the public.
Right. I just want to address that. So as Cheryl was saying, if you have land, if you have money, and folks want that land and that money, that's really the enticement for them to come to terms with, the terms to access that land and that money to make the development happen. Now, of course, if you're dealing with, for-profit developers, yes, they are in the business to make a profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, typically the enticement is, the resources that they're needing to access in order to make that development happen. And so, that's what, you offer to someone, if you want this piece of land, we're requiring perpetuity. And they can go for that. And most times, they're willing to work with you. So, and again, it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not going to be applicable in every situation, but it's definitely something you want to have in your local toolbox to address affordability.
So my point is, there's no tax break or anything for the property owner? I mean, I know the way you've explained separating the person who, as you aptly put it, the improvements.
Right.
But, so there are tax breaks to having a piece of property that's deemed agriculture. Is there no tax break for someone who owns property, knowing that they're going to be offering it up for,
Well, I think it would be helpful if the word improvement meant building.
Right.
Like house, or, I mean, the land is the land. And we think about, you buy a house, you're buying the house. Well, you're buying the house.
Yes.
The issue is you don't have to buy the land too, because the land is owned by the land trust, and you pay minimal taxes on the land portion. The home value is still there, or the multifamily housing, that's still there. And with it comes the restrictions when you go to sell. So you're still going to see, I mean, as we've experienced over the years, the margins in the, not only the amount that is available for purchasing affordable housing, the amount of income that changes over time. So those rules move with our economy to a certain extent. So you can, as a homeowner, because you still own the home.
I understand on that side of the equation. My question was, if I own a piece of property and I say, I want this to be a part of the community land trust, is there any tax incentive for me in the earliest stages?
To sell the property?
To deem it to be in the trust?
Well, is it charitable? Is it a charitable?
That's a charitable.
That's a charitable contribution if it's a charity. Is it a charity? Is it a 501c3?
That becomes a charitable
Right.
contribution. In that case.
I won't own it anymore. Okay. That's where I was going.
Okay.
Exactly.
Trying to figure out how you encourage.
Yeah, I would highly recommend talking to your tax advisor before you go that route, but I would.
They own that said
But,
property. But I
that may be a great way that we build land within a property. Is it possible to do land swapping within a community land trust? Either within the assets that are inside the trust versus someone owning land elsewhere?
Build on that. So you're saying someone swapping, like I own property, the land trust owns property, and we kind of swap.
When we own the land in the trust, has it already been deeded with the restrictions as it's owned, or is it available to swap with another possible location that's a better location, that there's an opportunity for a good trade without the restrictions?
Conceptually, I could possibly see if it's two undeveloped pieces of land,
Right.
and you own a piece of property, another property owner owns a piece, but you want theirs.
Their piece, because it's a better location for us.
They want yours. I mean, that's
Personal trade, yeah.
that's a business transaction. I mean, that doesn't necessarily relate to the land trust itself. That's just a transaction.
A transaction.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Mr. Hollis?
I was just going to ask, the land trust would be a 501c3, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so if you donated land to the 501c3, you take the tax benefit of a charitable contribution
Yes.
for the value of your property.
Yes.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. And also, as our representative from the Housing Finance Authority, right? Okay, so you mentioned earlier that, or in a conversation or a presentation I saw you do, that the Housing Finance Authority typically is doing helping finance projects that are for perpetuity. Is that still accurate?
Today, although there are still some, so I'm just speaking for the local Housing Finance Authority Board. Most of the deals that come before us today, they are doing a set-aside for a minimum of 50 years, and I would say more than half of the developers come to us and do the set-aside in perpetuity. So they're basically creating their own land trust, kinda.
Kinda.
But regardless of that, yeah, most of the deals today, although some people still like, how can you do that? It's like part of the bidding process, it's part of the deal. But most developers, builder developers, are seeing the need for long-term commitment to affordable housing these days. Now, I'm not talking 10, 15 years ago, but the deals that have come before us in the last 5 years or less have been offered up at long-term, 50 years or in perpetuity.
Okay. Mr. Nesbitt, you made one comment earlier that I think it just sort of ran right by us. When it comes to the property taxes associated with these properties, of which a homeowner or a developer purchases, wants to build on that land and does the improvements, how does the property tax work? We subsidize the waiver of property taxes on the land for all practical purposes because it's owned by the trust?
In a home ownership situation, if it's land owned by a community land trust, and this is the only place you'll see a statutory kind of definition, it has to be a 501c3 that's holding land in perpetuity for affordable housing. Then the property tax are assessed according to the resale restricted value of the improvement, that's the home, and the leasehold value of the land, that's kind of the legal lease that's within that statute. So if you look at the value of the land, is based upon the ground lease payment, essentially, which is going to be a very minimal amount. So that it's basically a negligible amount of taxes associated with the land. And then it's the resale restricted value of the improvements. So they're going to look at, in the ground lease, there's going to be a resale formula that determines what the house can be sold for, and that's the value that they're going to be taxed on. So whereas homes around it might be taxed, at the market rate, they're going to be taxed at that reduced rate.
That can be a significant savings to a homeowner, but also, how does that work in the multifamily arena?
So in the multifamily, doesn't have that same savings, but they're going to do an income cap, towards the taxes anyway. So they're going to look at the income that comes in with that. So they're going to get that savings regardless,
Okay.
because it's affordable housing development.
Okay, great. I see this as a great opportunity. What we may want to do is set up a subcommittee to actually work through this, to present to the board, and I would like to actually suggest that committee also include our representatives from the city and the city's housing departments, city's housing department. I know Plant City is working with you this afternoon. So we have some great opportunities, and looking forward to actually putting this into place, because as Hillsborough County continues to grow, as the Board of County Commission is adjusting or addressing its comprehensive planning and what we're wanting to do to be best prepared for the population growth that we experience in a sustainable way, I see this as you mentioned, another tool in the toolbox to help get that done. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like those old school presentations. Look at it later.
That's great. Subcommittee report, policy update. Nancy, you want to take this one on?
Sure. Yeah, we met a few weeks ago on the Affordable Housing Services Department's policy, their internal governing policy on foreclosure, loan forgiveness, subordination, change in ownership. And we had, I would say, a robust discussion on whether or not loan forgiveness should continue to be part of the explicit policy or not. It is currently, it's something we certainly don't want to see frequently be requested. So I believe the way that it was left is that we wouldn't specifically refer to loan forgiveness, but in the next draft of the policy, we'd maybe have a catch-all for other kinds of modification requests that could include potentially loan forgiveness. And Cheryl, did you want to update on the role of AHAB?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was not at the subcommittee meeting. I want to say so. I believe that Michelle and
that's right.
Natasha were at the meeting, and so was Commissioner Overman. So I met with Commissioner Overman after the subcommittee meeting, and there was a couple of different things that came forward in terms of the role of the Affordable Housing Board in the process. And so Commissioner Overman and I spoke about the role of AHAB and in terms of kind of having a 30,000-foot view of policy and pushing policy forward, and staff's role as the actual practitioners or operators that support those policies that are being pushed forward. And as I recall, Commissioner Overman and I both agreed that the Affordable Housing Board would push those policies and that staff would support those policies through the operation of it. So when we get requests, well, first of all, let me back up. Once we set the policy parameters, then staff has guidelines to go by, and when we get requests, we will review those requests based on our policy guidelines, make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, and then bring the outcome of those recommendations back to the board as it relates to the policies that you have supported.
Any comment? Okay, great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Next is legislative update, which,
Madam Chair, I think you have a quorum now to approve the minutes for the,
oh, that's right. We can go back to the minutes. So we have actually two minutes. One was for the subcommittee meeting and as well as for our last regular scheduled meeting. One for February 10th. Do I have a motion to approve?
motion approved.
Comment?
And comment to this February 10th meeting?
The minutes of the last meeting doesn't show me as being present. I arrived after the meeting began, but I was present for the balance of the meeting after I arrived.
Excellent. Okay.
You would notice that.
So do I have a motion with amendment to approve February 10th? And a second? I think we already heard. Okay. And you're seconding his amendment?
Yes, I agree.
Excellent. All approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Second meeting was the February 13th Advisory Board Subcommittee. Actually, Mark, you were there, but
Yeah.
myself and actually, who else was here?
I want to say David Hollis was there.
Okay,
And
okay,
Affordable
great.
Housing staff.
Any changes? Motion to approve? I have a second? Actually, he just left, so he can't second it. I'll second it. Okay. Do you have to leave? Oh, okay. All right. We'll wait till he returns for the second set of minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is a legislative agenda, and we'll come back to the second set of minutes in a minute. As I sort of preempted earlier, we've had some really good news over the weekend. There was a lot of hard work and a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, and I'm proud to suggest that even though we're keeping our fingers crossed until session closed, and I read something this morning indicating that they've got their work cut out for them to be able to close by Friday, that they may extend negotiations before session closes. But I have a feeling this is one of those items that's causing them some angst, and so we need to keep the pressure on, say thank you, thank you, thank you for those that put it there, and make sure that we are helping people understand that we want to be the best stewards we can of these resources, and it's critically needed for our environmental growth. The good news is that's the good, really, really good news. We are starting to also see pieces of legislation that is coming through that's impacting some of the tools that we have in our toolbox. One is Senator Huston's bill. It's headed to the Senate floor. It addresses a variety of things, including accessory dwellings. It does obviously impact the budget. And it does set up some rules for us. It does require that we have some workshop training that would make sure that we're best prepared to serve our community when it comes to affordable housing. It also makes sure that we are making sure that we're working with individuals that have not had a criminal history or areas that would suggest that we are working with someone that is unfortunately not going to operate well. So, for example, individuals that have made material misrepresentations, committed fraud, or previously been convicted of a crime relating to the financing, construction, and management of affordable housing. So I want to make sure that we're working with folks that are going to deliver the services we need. And that's an important part of our process already, but that's putting it into law. There is also, both in the House and the Senate, so there's a common language in there regarding impact fees to be reported on an annual basis and submitted to the Department of Financial Services, including the purpose of the fee and the schedule of the policy. So, one more piece of paperwork that we got to do, but it's not something that we don't already have the information, so we should be able to accommodate that piece. On the House side, there's some language that's a little different. It adds languages about housing for not-for-profit organizations, making sure that they're focusing some need for those individuals with mental health, so we can add to that bucket. There's a little bit of a difference between the House and the Senate on the accessory dwelling units, so we'll have to monitor that to see if they're able to get those items to sync up by the time those bills go to the floor. Am I missing anything?
I think the Community Workforce Housing Loan Program.
Right. There's 2 items, it's actually several items. As I mentioned earlier, the regional workshops that require elected officials serving on affordable housing advisory committees to attend biannual regional workshops to discuss best practices. When we forward or you get an invitation to attend these, like the Florida Housing Coalition and other workshops, it's going to be an opportunity for us to, I think, to get that training that's being recommended by both bills.
I will look into bringing some outside organizations in to do the regional training for our board, or maybe for boards of the region.
Okay, great.
If that would qualify, that would be very helpful.
Exactly. And we have plenty of workshops to go to, so we might be able to get some credits in places. There is also some interesting SHIP funds for foster care. Permits the portion of sale funds to be prioritized for construction of foster care housing or persons aging out of foster care. Really important segment of our population that are at risk, and being able to provide housing there is very, very important. There's a community workforce housing loan program. We've heard a lot of various different organizations that are very focused on workforce housing, and this is a tool, if this passes, establishes a permanent administrative program with the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. Eligible for workforce housing requires total household income not to exceed 80% of AMI and 120% of AMI in areas of critical concern. So it adds some tools to our toolbox, but also sets up some parameters on how it qualifies. Traditionally, workforce has been up to 140, and this does set some limits on that income range. Let's see, the other is that some data reporting requirements regarding ship housing. So I anticipate us seeing several areas in the area of ship and sale funding. The one thing that I'm very interested in watching closely is the review committee will consider local government policies that promote access to public transportation, reducing the need for on-site parking and expedite permits for affordable housing projects. This is going to be in line with our overall growth here in Hillsborough County, so I'm kind of excited to see this. But that's how we get some of this done. You know, we're offering various different opportunities to reduce the overall fees, reduce the cost, but at the same time make sure we're providing quality housing. And in a marketplace where multifamily is two things. One of the most attractive area of investing in real estate in our market across the country these days, but also knowing that every single one of our affordable housing multifamily projects opens up. They're at capacity with no room the moment they cut the ribbon. This gives us some great tools to move forward. So keep an eye on the CS Senate Bill 998 by Senator Huston, and then the House Bill 1339 by Representative Yarborough, to see how these things unfold over the next week or so, depending on how much longer they go.
So the way you have it laid out, the fact that it goes across at the bottom, so both bills are the same for all those items, starting at impact fees? Okay. Do you have any idea? They have two places about elected officials attending regional workshops. One of them is you will, failure to attend, that type of thing. Do you know what's driving that? Do you have any idea?
I want to say, I just think having people on the Affordable Housing Advisory Boards that are educated and really abreast of the issues. So our board is fantastic, but some of the boards are from places that are really small, and they don't have people who are abreast of the issues in affordable housing. So this is a way of keeping them abreast of the issues.
I mean, that's pretty strong to be in there twice.
Yeah, we, that's part of the reason I kind of saw some of this coming, and that's part of the reason why we addressed reorganizing the board and addressing our own bylaws in order to beef up some of the accountability. So there's more electeds on the board than there previously was. But as Ms. Howell referenced, there's some boards across the state that have not made that change. And so the good news is we're ahead of the game, I think. And the differences in the language has to do with the regional workshop versus our own workshops and those kinds of things. So we'll tackle that when we get there.
I think it's more that the elected officials know what's going on. So a lot of these boards don't have anybody on there, and you don't know what's happening. So I think that's probably part of the provisions in there now.
Right.
And
Exactly.
some boards only meet once every 3 years. And so we meet once a month. And so we've never met less than once every 2 months. But some boards only meet once every 3 years.
Yeah. So we're doing our work.
Yeah, we're doing great.
We're doing our work.
Thank you for all your work on this. I can see your handwriting.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Hollis, now that you've returned, can we vote on the second meeting? Because you disappeared on us and we didn't get a chance to vote on it.
We almost had to say you weren't here.
Your attendance means our quorum, so. So I would like to entertain,
that.
no
It was my
problem,
boss.
entertain a motion for the February 13 minutes.
Move. Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Just thought we'd go back and get that taken care of. All right, we have three community directors' report items. Would you like to cover the first one and bring Ms. Mattson back up? Oh, did she?
I think Ms. Madsen left the room. Hi, Cheryl Howell, Affordable Housing Director. And I have a couple of items here that's on my list this morning. But first, I'd like to make comment that we are currently, Affordable Housing Services is currently working with Development Services on a couple of items, parking being one of them, and fee waiver being another one. So those are already in the works. And I also wanted to report to this board that we have done a couple of projects. I want to say it's 4 projects for youth aging out of foster care. That is a very vulnerable population, but I want you to know that your support on this board has allowed for that to occur in this community, and we look forward to doing some additional projects. Under our community highlight, we have Ms. Ann Madsen. I want to say you heard from her a little bit earlier from Center for Women. We have done some astounding work. They put together a great process in serving the community, and so we are so very proud to work with them. And as she said, we've done over 50 homes in the last couple of years, and so as funding has, well, we're hoping will be increased a little bit more, we'll be able to do more. And so when you look at our reports, you'll see that under housing preservation. So what they do is really allow people to remain in their homes, and it also stabilizes some of our older communities as well. So that's a great investment.
Can I add something to that? One of the things that we're looking at is our readiness for storms and other problems. When we're able to fix homes specifically in those areas where people are told to, weather the storm in place, our most vulnerable properties, unfortunately, may not be in flood-prone areas. They may be in older homes, older communities, where they're seniors or low-income individuals that have not been able to maintain their home, and so they're really not in a safe place, even though they're location-wide would imply that they are. So programs like this really does help with build not only our hurricane readiness or sustainability, and helps keep communities in good shape. And so I'm really pleased to see that they've done a good job. I moved here in 1984. I became aware of the Center for Women and their partnership, working on the SHIP program, and so I think we've had a long-standing relationship with them, and I'm glad to see that it's still thriving and doing well.
Okay, great. And I'd like to move to another item, and this item is not on your list, but certainly on mine. We have nominating of the committee for the AHAB officers that has to take place. Is that next month? So we will need will we need a subcommittee, or we're just going to nominate?
It's done by a nominating committee.
Okay, so we will need
Folks who would like to participate in the nominating committee would just have a brief meeting, select a slate of officers that'd be voted on at the April AHAB meeting.
Will that need to be noticed, because we'll have possibly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do you have a date in mind?
I do not have a date in mind. We could, once we have the subcommittee members, we typically do the online polling for availability.
Okay.
We'll send out a doodle poll with several different options.
Okay, and who would like to be on the nominating committee? Do we need 3, 4 people?
3 would be great.
3 would be great.
One more?
Who else?
Come on, guys.
Nominating committee?
I should not be on this committee. I'm the chair, so.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Okay, we have 3.
Okay, great. Thank you very
you.
much. I was just thinking I probably can't be on the committee, so.
Jerry, Orlando, and Mark.
Okay, great. And now we are going to bring up our Contracts Division, Ms. Layla Hart, and she'll be reporting to you this morning on some of the great work that we're doing with our partners out in the community. Come on down.
Do I get a prize?
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is
Repeat
Layla
your name
Hartz.
for the record, please.
Sure. Layla Hartz. I am the Interim Contract Services Manager. for the Contract Services Division. I oversee a team of contracts managers, and our sole purpose is really to get our subrecipients and developers across the finish line. So we oversee and we help our subrecipients and developers get through the permitting, planning, and procurement, the 3 Ps process. Currently, we have 42 active projects that we're managing, and they include 20 public facility renovations. So if you're not familiar, that's a CDBG program. Excuse me. I'm trying to get over a little sickness. Which includes group homes, a children's education center, community parks, adult service, special needs daycare centers, homeless and youth aging out of foster care facilities. We have 5 single-family housing rehabilitation projects, 1 single-family construction project, 1 new construction multifamily project, 3 land acquisition projects, and 6 urban county projects with the City of Temple Terrace and Plant City. And, we also have a DPA program with the HFA. Do you have any questions about our current projects? I'd be happy to answer those.
Keep them coming.
Keep them coming, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think
Working
people
on it.
realize how busy our contracts department is.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. There's a lot going on in this area. I'm very proud of our affordable housing team. They take on a lot. Not only do we help get these projects moving, but then we monitor them very diligently. Thank you, Michelle. We've got a great team of people, and it's a small and mighty team. So I'm thank you for the work that you're doing.
You're welcome. Like I said, we do have to comply with state and federal regulations. So our team is very adept at, the regulations. So we help our subrecipients and developers who may not necessarily be that engaged with those regulations to stay in compliance. So it is a big job, and we're happy to do it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Layla. She does an absolutely wonderful job. Okay, and on our federal and local grants updates, we have the Florida Home Loan Bank of Atlanta. They have a funding opportunity, I want to say it's at $500,000. And that is through the Florida Home Loan Bank of Atlanta. They do have an application timeline. It's a great program. None of our nonprofits have applied to this particular grant program yet. But I got a friend of mine down in the Palm Beach area, and she had one of her nonprofits apply for it. The timeline is very, very strict. But they were able to utilize that $500,000, and so that's a great addition and complement to local resources.
So, with that in mind, who does someone call if they feel as though they need to get involved?
I'll have Natasha send out that information. I know the young man, and he's been working in the field for a number of years. I cannot think of his name at this time, but I will have her send out that information to the board.
Great, thank you.
So I have email and telephone number. We have our monthly newsletter that's included, and then we have our number of Board of County Commissioner items that we took to the board, and we included those for your review as well.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Future business items. Anyone have any future items? Cody Powell?
I just wanted to pass these out.
Bring your mic down, please.
Sorry. I just wanted to make the board aware that the Planning Commission is going to be having an informational brown bag quarterly, and we have a guest speaker, and the topic is going to be a new zoning category to allow for the missing middle housing and transitional corridors. So if anyone would like to attend, there's a little.
What's the date?
That's going to be on 4/13.
4/13, and the location, please?
It is going to be, sorry. Where's this one at? Oh, Plain Hillsborough Room, sorry.
Not everybody knows where that is. 18th floor of the county center, at what time?
It's from noon to 1.
From noon to 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Just in case someone's just listening. Thank you very much for that information. Any other items? Councilman Goode?
Ms. Howell, don't run off. If you give me like 2 or 3 minutes after the meeting, I want to talk to you. I talked to Commissioner Miller a little bit about Tampa Park, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
That's my question. So if he's talking to you, I'm good.
Okay.
Just let us know.
Yeah, there is a lot of conversation going on about Tampa Parks. We got very little notice when Friendship Palms went down. The good news is, in partnership with the city and the county, I think we have a little more time to come up with a concerted plan for the individuals that are living there. So I know that that's an item on my concern list as well. So I'm glad to see that we'll, start problem solving for that right now.
The reason I said it, Commissioner, a lot of communities are asking what we're doing, and like I told them, we got hit with this at a short notice period, about a week and a half now, 2 weeks, so it give us a little time to kind of set some meetings up the community. They're asking why no meetings right now. Well, again, I tell people we've got to find a plan within ourselves to bring a solution to the community first, and then once we get that, we will bring it to the community, from what I was told Mr. Commissioner Miller and my people in the city. So again, at least give me a few minutes afterwards.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the attention to this. It's important for our community.
Will we hear back on the progress?
If we're able to make some significant progress by the next meeting, I'm sure it's going to end up being on the agenda.
I just want to make sure Bishop Patty knows we're working on it.
Right. No, we're working on it. Trust me. It came up the day we got the announcement.
Well, I don't think people realize, when these tenants are told they have X amount of time, there are a couple of rules that they have to follow that none of us appreciate. We don't understand. They are very limited as to extra money that would go to save for a now deposit on a new apartment. And they're limited as how much money they can save in general. As I've noted before, I have a family member in Pinellas County, and what she had to go through and the narrow hoops to get into a new unit with very little time was, and to follow the rules.
Right.
Was very difficult.
And to your point, you lose certain benefits when you have enough to save for your down payment. And that's the
Exactly.
challenge. It is quite difficult, which is why I think a concerted effort is going to be
Yeah, so
critically
whatever
important.
waivers we can come up with that keep us within the federal guidelines, state guidelines, county there's like I say, very narrow little hoops but very, very difficult for these people to get through. And I heard 1,200 people, but how many units, do we know how many units we're looking for?
We're not sure. I want to say they said it was between 350.
340.
340.
It's about 340. We discussed it a little bit at council last week.
new apartments.
It's again, citizens came. We discussed it last week, so they know that we're looking. But there are a lot of parameters with this thing that's going on that I can't discuss right now. But there are a lot of things that are going on with that.
Okay, thank you so much for doing that.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's one of the challenges when we have limited affordable housing inventory. When things like this occur, and with the markets where they are as far as real estate, we have to be proactive in trying to find good constructive ways of solving these problems. And with that in mind, I got the pleasure of attending an event last week in partnership with Florida Home Partnership. We celebrated 3 environmentally net zero friendly properties. There were 7 homes that were being built in the Riverview area that are adopting a technology that not only allows for a home to be sustainable and protect against hurricane winds in the sense that it can withstand 250 mile an hour winds. It is net zero, which basically means the construction of the exterior of the building allows for the less heat and AC relief. It also, they plan on putting metal roofs that last, somewhere between 10 and 30 years instead of your traditional shingle type of roof, and adding solar power. So not only does it allow for a home to be purchased by a homeowner that's affordable getting in the door, but it allows it to stay affordable as they live there. And I think this kind of technology could also be migrated not only for single-family construction, but apparently it has the ability to be used in multifamily as well. So I'd like to entertain in the future agenda items to bring back, to take a look at some of our policies and what we can do to encourage this kind of construction. Because, as I mentioned, it makes it affordable for a multifamily housing organization, because they're less, if you're covering the total cost of the place, including utilities, that makes these projects much more sustainable. If the wind strength is something that plays a part, if solar is something that reduces expenses long-term, a lot of these things we could adopt as pluses in our policy when it comes to affordable housing projects, when they come to the department as well as to the board for approval. So I'll add it to an agenda item once we are able to figure out what rules we have. But for example, right now, in affordable housing projects, there's a rule that requires LEED certified utilities. Appliances. So there isn't any reason why we can't adopt some opportunity for encouraging sustainable building practices that not only help people be prepared for where we live here in Florida, but also allow for affordability on a long-term and long-scale basis. So I'd like to bring that in the future, and once we gather a little more information, we'll put it on the next, not in the next agenda, but possibly the next one. Any other future items?
Thank you. I had a question about, there was an event that I wasn't able to attend that I believe it was the Tampa Affordable Housing Board. They were going to Able Nook maybe a couple weeks ago to do a tour of their facilities, and what I gathered, another gentleman who's on the planning commission, so he was going to there and he invited me to come, but I was sick and I couldn't attend. But I was curious, do we ever set up anything similar to that, or have we ever gone to that facility before? Because it sounded like it was a really innovative, company that is building tiny homes for affordable housing, and I was just really keen on going, but I was upset that I couldn't go. So I know if anyone has ever been there before, or if not, maybe we could set up our own tour.
I've been there about 3 or 4 times, and so I really am excited about what they're doing at Able Nook. And so Sarah Combs, who sits on this committee, went with a small group of nonprofits that we currently work with out to the site to view the units that they have on site. I also took Jamie Ross and her team out to see what they're doing at Able Nook, and they're going to be presenting at the Florida Housing Coalition Conference this year, and I think they're already working with Enterprise Community Partners as well to help scale them up. And so I'd be more than happy to set up a visit so that this board can go out there collectively to see what they're doing. But yes, I am so very proud of it, and I've been out there about 4 times now. So.
I would love to go if we can get that set up.
Okay, and do we have a date for the Florida, the workshop,
It's
the
like July
conference?
31st or something.
I'm not sure. No, it typically happens around late August. Mid to late August is when the.
It's Labor Day week, because I'm supposed to be on vacation that week.
Well, and I saw,
Or is it September?
It's always the week that I'm supposed to be on vacation that week. And is it in Orlando?
It is in Orlando this year, and so I sit on the board, but I have not received a final date on it yet. So I'll see.
I think it's the last week of August this year, but we'll
sooner the
get
better
date.
to get on my calendar as well.
Yep, exactly.
So I'd
Especially
like to-
now that we may find ourselves in a
Well, now that we've
situation where we have
found
to
out
go to
we
these
have to
things.
Yeah, it looks like we're going. But I'd like to know if I can,
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Okay,
As soon as
great.
you can get that.
The date for that.
Okay,
It starts Monday, August 31st, and goes through Wednesday, September 2nd.
of course, my vacation week. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So you got that? And we'll make sure we put it on next month's agenda to help remind everyone.
It's in Orlando at the Rosen Center.
Excellent, thank you. Any other items? Okay, thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Thank you very much.